Islam is the only religion. I mean, think about this. If I wanted to make a YouTube video today, yeah? Theoretically. Let's say we'll make a YouTube video. We make it as clickbait as possible and all that kind of stuff. How many Guidance Avenue or SC Dawa or any channel right now? What kind of views am I going to get? If I'm lucky, 100,000, 150,000, those kind of numbers we're talking about, yeah? And then after about 2-3 years, it will be forgotten. Yeah? Now imagine this. Someone has come with a book, which in the case is the Qur'an. And here we are in West Europe, Speaker's Corner, 2017, some 1,439 years after this person has come with this book, still talking about this book. That is a powerful thing. Someone will say, well, the same is true with the Bible. The same is true with the Bible, because we would say the Bible, there's parts of it which are in fact revelation. We agree with that premise. Okay, you're right. Yeah, some of it is revelation. Some of it is from God. The same is true with the Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, okay, some of it might be revelation. We're not saying it's all false. There's some bits of it which are true. But it's remained regional. Sikhism remained regional. Islam is the only religion, the Abrahamic religions really, are the only religions which have become international. And Islam is the only religion where I promise you guys, there's no second that goes by in any day where there's someone that's not mentioning the name of Muhammad or Allah. In any part of the world. You know how profound that is? In the Quran it says, وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ. About Prophet Muhammad, we have raised your status. And you're mentioning. Dhikr means mentioning. In other words, look at this. If I say here and now, and this is a challenge, let's put it into let me relate it to the people of today, the YouTubers, yeah? I'm saying to the YouTubers, come out, make a video. I don't care if your name is I don't know what, yeah? Make a video that stays relevant for 1,439 years. Make a video. Make a video. Do it. Do it. Then also say, I'm going to be mentioned by everyone for that period of time. وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ is mentioned in chapter number 94 of the Quran. We have raised your status. Can you imagine the kind of profound effect this book has had? It's from a quantifiable perspective. This is not something which is qualitative, which is subjective. We're talking about sociological transformation. People are talking about now in almost any university you go in this country, they talk about political Islam. Any media is talking about Islam. Why is it so relevant? Why are they not talking about Sikhism? Why are they not talking about Buddhism? Talk about something else. It cannot stop pervading the minds of men. Islam is a religion which cannot stop pervading the minds of men. Why? Because Allah has told us that. That's a prediction. وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ. We have raised your status. Make a prediction like that. Do it. In the imitability challenge, we have to take this challenge seriously, because this challenge is serious. It's saying make something like it. Produce 3 lines that change the world. Make me say your name. Make my children say your name. Make my grandchildren say your name. Make my great-grandchildren say your name. Believe me, all of your great-grandchildren, whether you're a non-Muslim or not, or a Muslim, have said the word Muhammad before. All of them have said it. All of them have said it. How comes none of you will ever say, none of you can never make any book that will ever say anything other than no one will mention you. You're nothing. Plato, Aristotle, all of these individuals, they are foreign in the minds and the tongues of men, of many men. And they are, by the consensus of logicians, probably the highest of logicians and thinkers. This is what we've got to think about. Do you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Bro, this...
Another question on the language, if that's all right.
Yes, please.
So we talked earlier how human beings, being imperfect, cannot create anything that's perfect themselves.
Yeah.
And naturally, any language that we use is as a result of human societies. It evolves. And language is imperfect. Language has exceptions. English is classic.
Yeah.
In that it's not even phonetically pronounced. So it's a real havoc to try and navigate the English language.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure about Arabic or Farsi or any of the other Middle Eastern languages.
Yeah.
So around the time of when the Quran was written, there was a language being used by that society. It's naturally imperfect. It doesn't perfectly convey ideas.
Okay.
And yet God has the challenge of creating a perfect text, because anything that comes from God is perfect, necessarily.
Yeah.
So how is it that God is able to create a perfect text using an imperfect language? How do those two things reconcile?
Okay, do you know, this is a really interesting question. And this goes into the field of linguistics, and I swear there's lots of interesting things you can read about this, yeah? And I'll refer you to Noam Chomsky's Universal Grammar, yeah, because it is an interesting thing. It's such a deep discussion that basically what he says is this. There are two schools of thought in linguistics, yeah? It's called the empirical school of thought, and there's the kind of Chomsky's Universal Grammar school of thought. The empirical school of thought is that you're suggesting that you can only output that which you've input. So in other words, you see a tree, you see this, you're told what that thing is called, you can only output that which is input. A lot of people have written books about this. This is called the empirical school of thought. On the other hand, you have Noam Chomsky, who argues, and others like him, universal grammarists, if you will, people that believe in the universal grammar school of thought. They say that actually, human being has an innate ability to create something more with the grammatical constructions that they have. So in other words, the input is not as much as the output. And he says that the output is more than the input. Language is a really interesting thing. Is a very powerful mechanism by which and through which we communicate with other people. And obviously that's something which is specified to the human being. Animals don't have language in the same way that human beings have. They have sounds that they make, but they don't have language. Now, you're talking about Arabic and all these different imperfect. Look, I would make a point that actually Arabic, in terms of its grammar structure, is Arabic and Hebrew. I will say the Semitic languages, and this is my opinion, are the most logical, grounded, and mathematical languages in the world. And I'll tell you why. If now I say, look, there's a big red bus in English language, I'm saying, look, there's a big red bus. If I said red big bus, does that make sense? No, it doesn't. There's a grammatical code, there's an algorithm in English language which makes it necessary for us to say big red bus. Size, color, adjective, or the thing being a noun, the common or proper noun. It has to be like that. Why? It's an arbitrary thing because English language is a result of different languages like Old English, French, when the Normans came in, all these different languages that are pretty much amalgamated into this kind of confusing language, which is now English. We know it, but the truth is its grammatical structures are not perfect and they're not mathematical in the same way as the Semitic languages are, because the Semitic languages have a purer line of transmission, you could say. Really, the linguists say that there is one, what they call it, the mother Semitic language. And from it, you have Syrianic, and you have Hebrew, and you have Aramaic, and you have Arabic. And all of these different things, I thought this guy was talking to me, and all of these different things are Semitic languages. Now you'll find that the Semitic languages have oft been chosen by God to communicate the message of whatever it is he's trying to communicate. There's a real reason for that, because actually it has the purest line to the start of civilization. In terms of language, the first thing we have written down is about 8,000 years old. 8,000 years old, yeah? That's the first thing we have written down. About 8,300, whatever it may be, 400 years old. The first civilization that ever came into existence was about 8,000, 9,000 years old, yeah? The cradle of the earth, as it was called, is about 8,000, 9,000 years old. The oldest civilization is probably the Mesopotamian civilization, followed by the Egyptians, followed by the Indus River civilization, followed by the ancient Greeks, the Minoans and the Mycenaeans, and etc., etc. Yeah, and then you have the Persians coming in, and then all these things afterwards. Why am I telling you this? Because actually, if we assume that the first thing we have in terms of language is about 8,400 years old, and in Mesopotamia they had a Semitic language, which was in their case that was Semitic language of some sorts. Yeah, if that's the case, then we know now that this has a closer link to the Islamic and Quranic narrative. The Quran says وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا ثُمَّ عَرَضَهُمْ إِلَى الْمَلَائِكَةِ فَقَالَ أَنْبِئُونِي بِأَسْمَاءِ هَؤُلَاءِ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. In the Quran, in chapter number 2 of the Quran, the beginning of the chapter, I think verse 23 or something like this, it says that God taught Adam the asma, the nouns. How did he teach them? Through the agents of the angels. Language, therefore, is not something which is imperfect in its essence. It's something which is taught by God to the first human being, and that's Adam. And then it's transmitted. And so we say the purest of languages are those which God has chosen to narrate the Quran. And that's why one of our scholars, Ibn al-Jazari, he says, he calls it afsah al-lughat, is one of the most purest and clearest languages, Arabic, for that reason. Does that make sense?
That's a fantastic answer. I had no idea it was that complex and delicate, but that's brilliant. Yeah.
All right. So look, now we've talked about why believing in God makes sense. We've talked about why believing in the oneness of God makes sense. We've talked about reasons to believe in revelation. I want to ask you a question, Sebastian. Does it not make sense now at this stage to embrace Islam?
That's a huge question.
I'll tell you something. What happens when you embrace Islam is you're literally just saying two things. What happens when people come into Islam, and they come almost every week now into Islam, they say, yeah, let me just, I'll tell you about this. And what happens is that they say that God is one. They admit that God is worthy of worship. When we say worship, we're saying that in terms of ultimate authority, that goes to God. Ultimate authority should go to God. Yeah? Rousseau said, man is born free but everywhere in chains. We're saying the way to undo the chains, the shackles of civilization, and to free yourself and liberate yourself is to free yourself from the authority of man or the creation and put yourself into the authority of the Creator. So we say that when the two things you've got to admit is that God is worthy of worship and that Prophet Muhammad is his final messenger. That there were a long line of messengers, Adam, Moses, Jesus, all of these individuals were human beings. And that those human beings were given a message, and that message was the same thing I'm telling you now. They had to transmit it to their communities, and they had evidences to show why their message is true. At the end of it, people would accept or reject. So my question to you is, does that sound reasonable?
It does indeed. It does. I can't say it doesn't.
Yes. Yeah. So I would say that what you do is you say two short phrases in Arabic. This will initiate you into becoming a Muslim. There's no baptism required, don't worry about this. Yeah. Although if you do want to have a shower when you go home, it's recommended.
It's all good. What happens if you decide not to become a Muslim in a year or so?
Yes, in the Quran. Yes, I will. Sorry, I should have told him that. Yes. In the Quran, in chapter 2, verse 256, it says, لا إكراه في الدين قد تبين الرشد من الغي فما يكفر بالطاغوت ويؤمن بالله فقد استمسك بالعروة الوثقى لا انفصام لها. It says that there's no compulsion in religion, that the truth is made clear from falsehood. Yeah, and whoever he disbelieves in the false gods and believes in the one God, then he has held on to the tight grip, and that there is no releasing in that grip. So that's what the Quran says about.
So if he moves to Iran or
Iran is not a Muslim country, my friend.
In a year or so, and then stands in their speaker's corner and says, "I don't want to be a Muslim anymore." Can you explain what might happen?
Nothing will happen.
I should say that half my family lives in Iran, and they're all pretty much atheists. So
there you have it.
Your conception that they all hang each other from cranes because they have nothing better to do is quite false, to be honest.
Thank you. Thank you. Whoa, he knows.
In the Tehran speaker's corner and explain why they're atheist and.
Yes, Iran has bear in mind that it's Shia. It does have a large Christian population. You're talking about the bastion of civilization as well. So
yes,
look,
yes.
Don't get me wrong. I also don't. No. You don't try and put me in a box. On the one hand, I don't agree with the media narrative. On the other hand, I don't agree with everything that anyone else says. But there is a balance, and
Fair enough.
like.
It's your choice.
Just for example, I just have to put this out there. I have a cousin. She goes night clubbing in Iran. She's also doing a veterinary degree. Like they have access to.
Yes.
They have access to beer if they want to use it. Not that they would.
Yeah.
It's not as savage as everyone makes out.
This is a good point, because actually in countries like Iran, a lot of people don't know this. Well, in countries like Iran, there are two kinds of, I would say, to oversimplify it, there are people who are completely not religious there. They don't actually live a religious lifestyle whatsoever, and they're allowed to exist. It's not like they're all, like you said, hanging from cranes. Yeah. Anyways.
They're allowed to exist.
Yeah, they're allowed. Well, they're not killed, are they?
Can I say my interpretation? So we spoke earlier. We just said
Yes.
that there being no compulsion in religion. If a religion exists there to test your virtues and your faith, then obviously if you make someone follow the rules of any particular thing, then you are not testing whether they're a virtuous person.
Exactly.
In fact, what you're doing is if you say I'm going to punish you if you don't follow my rules, then the only reason they're following their rules is for pure self-interest, which is the exact opposite of some of the virtues that religion teaches. So any religion, any at all, necessarily must say that that there is choice. Anything.
Yes, I really like that answer. And do you know what I want to say in addition to that? Is that this point is a really interesting theological point. We say that the best reason to worship God is because that is the most appropriate thing to do. There's a beautiful verse in the Quran in chapter 76 verse 1 where it says about the insan, the human being. لم يكن شيء مذكورا. Yeah, he was not something which was mentioned. The point being is that whether human being is there or not, God still deserves praise. And that's why in the very first chapter, in the very first verse in the Qur'an, it says, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Praise be to God, Lord of the worlds. And that's not connected to anything or anyone. In other words, no human being needs to praise God in order for him to have praise belong to him. It's the most appropriate thing. It's the most appropriate thing to describe God in the first place, worthy of praise. Now, going back to what we were saying before, the initiation process is literally 2 statements. That would make you a Muslim. Then after that, you'd learn how to pray. Obviously, the quicker the better. And you don't need to learn every single minute, like little detail about it, but we would support you with that. I'll give you my number afterwards. That sound all right?
Yes, of course.
So you can follow what I say in Arabic, and then afterwards I'll translate in English. Yeah. Ashhadu.
Wait, what is going on?
Oh, sorry, I'll say it in English.
Is this the conversion process?
Yes.
I think I'm going to have to spend a lot more time talking because, as I said to you, I need to talk more about it. But that wouldn't be the right thing for me to do at this time.
Okay,
but
good.
perhaps after more Speaker's Corner sessions.
No problem.
I've got to make... Yeah.
Yes. Take your time. No, listen. That's one thing we would like to emphasize. That if you're not ready to do it, it's not something we want to force upon you. So just take your time, think about it. I'll still give you my number. So if you have any questions...
Why not?
Yeah, that would be good. Where are you from, by the way? What country?
I grew up in the UK, but as I said, I'm half British, half Iranian.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, no. I'll give you my number. Obviously, Mohammed will give you his number as well. It's been fantastic talking to you. Thank you very much for everything.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, man.